There is a quality that the camera finds in certain people that has no technical name and resists technical description. A quality of aliveness so immediate and so complete that the audience receives it not as performance, but as presence, not as something being shown to them, but as something happening in front of them in real time. The silent era had its share of gifted performers, but most of them communicated through a grammar of exaggerated gesture and heightened expression that the medium had developed as a substitute for sound. Every few years, someone arrived who didn't use that grammar, who simply existed in front of the camera with a completeness and a naturalness that made the grammar seem, by contrast, like shouting in a quiet room. Clara Bow was one of those people. She was, in fact, the one who made the most people notice. Clara Gordon Bow was born on July 29, 1905, in Brooklyn, New York, into a childhood that the word difficult does not adequately describe. Her father was absent in every meaningful sense of the word, present sometimes, providing for the family never, a man whose relationship to his responsibilities was entirely theoretical. Her mother suffered from severe mental illness, the specific nature of which was not well understood at the time, and was therefore treated with the cruelty that the era reserved for conditions it could not categorize. Clara grew up in poverty that was absolute, and in a household that was unstable, in ways that left marks on her nervous system that no amount of subsequent fame or wealth could fully erase. She escaped into the movies, into the dark of the local cinema, where the screen offered a world that was larger and more beautiful and more comprehensible than the one she went home to, and decided, with the fierce clarity of someone who has identified the only exit, that she was going to be in the movies. She was 16 when she entered a fan magazine beauty and acting contest, and she won, and the prize was a screen test, and the screen test produced the reaction that screen tests of genuinely talented people produce, the reaction of the camera that has found something and doesn't want to look away. She made her first film in 1922. She was in Hollywood by 1923. By 1927, she was the most popular film actress in the world. The speed of the ascent was not accidental and was not simply luck, though luck was present. It was the result of a specific quality that the screen amplified rather than created, a quality of physical and emotional spontaneity that the camera caught and transmitted as a form of energy that audiences had not previously encountered in quite this form. She moved differently than other actresses. She reacted differently, with her whole body, with the specific immediacy of someone whose emotional responses had never been managed into appropriate channels, because the childhood that would have done the managing had been otherwise occupied. She was, on screen, entirely unguarded. And the unguardedness wasn't a technique. It was the only mode available to a woman who had never learned to perform composure, because composure had never been available to her. It happened in 1927, and the word "it," coined by the novelist Eleanor Glynn to describe an ineffable quality of sex appeal and personal magnetism, became attached to Clara Bow with the permanence of a label applied in the right place at the right moment. She was the it girl. The film that bore the title made her the most famous young woman in America, and the fame brought with it 45,000 fan letters a week, which is a number so large that it required a dedicated staff to manage, and which represents the kind of cultural phenomenon that the modern entertainment industry manufactures, but that the 1920s simply discovered, unprepared, in a girl from Brooklyn who had wanted to be in the pictures. The Roaring Twenties needed her, not Clara Bow specifically. It needed what she represented, which was the flapper in her most fully realized form. The bobbed hair, and the bee-stung lips, and the legs that the shortened hemlines of the era finally made visible, and underneath all of it, the spirit that the visual presentation announced, free, irreverent, sexual, in the open and unapologetic way that the previous generation had considered impossible for a respectable woman, and entirely unconcerned with the opinion of the people who considered it impossible. She was the new woman, not the suffragists' version, though she was that too in the deeper sense of a woman who refused the available limitations, the version that danced and drank and went to parties and chose her own company and did not particularly care what anyone thought about any of it. Hollywood received all of this with the enthusiasm of an industry that recognized box office gold and the unease of an institution that had not yet figured out how to manage a woman who would not be managed. The gossip press did the managing that the studios could not. The scandal columns ran stories about her personal life, some true, some invented, all designed to produce in the reader the specific combination of fascination and contempt that the press had always reserved for women who were too publicly alive. She was called cheap. She was called loose. The stories multiplied and were repeated and eventually achieved the specific gravitational mass of narratives that have been repeated often enough that the repetition itself becomes evidence of truth. She struggled with her mental health in ways that the era had no vocabulary for and no treatment of. The anxiety was severe. The exhaustion of constant public scrutiny on top of a nervous system already compromised by the childhood she had survived was real and cumulative and eventually overwhelming. She retired in 1931 at 28 years old, when most careers are just finding their full range. 28. The most popular actress in the world, and she was done at 28. Not because the talent was exhausted, but because the person carrying the talent had been exhausted by everything the industry and the press and the gossip culture had done with it. She married the actor Rex Bell in 1931 and moved to a ranch in Nevada and tried, with the specific determination of someone who has identified what survival requires, to build a life that was quiet enough for her particular nervous system to inhabit. The quietness was imperfect. The mental health issues continued. She was hospitalized more than once. She spent years in a kind of semi-reclusiveness that the public, which had consumed her with such appetite at her peak, largely accepted because it had moved on to other appetites. She died on September 26, 1965, in Inglewood, California, at the age of 60, of a heart attack, alone. Her husband had died the previous year. Her sons were grown. The world that had named her the It Girl had receded entirely into history. She left behind the films, and in the films, the most modern performance style of her era. Directors who worked with her described being unable to direct her in the conventional sense because her instincts were already right before the direction was given. She didn't act. She reacted. She responded. She was present, fully and without protection, in every scene she ever played. And the presence was the performance, and the performance was the art. And the art was a blueprint that every actress who came after her has worked from whether she knew it or not. 45,000 letters a week, retirement at 28, 60 years, and a quiet death in Inglewood. She burned bright and fast, as the shooting stars do. What she left behind still illuminates.